All right, welcome back to the final half hour of Green Rush Live. I'm Jimmy Young, the regular sort of host of Green Rush Live, but I have two guest hosts that are also regulars with me, Doug Miller from New Jersey and Josh Kincaid from the Talking Hedge out of Washington State. But we are so happy to bring in a very special guest for the last half hour of this show, and his name is Quawntay Adams. And he spent a little time in the big house, as they say, and his story is quite compelling. Quawntay, welcome to the program. Welcome to Green Rush Live. And can you please tell us how your life, what is your cannabis story in a short time? Because I guess there's a movie coming out and you got a book coming out too.
Well, yeah, the book's actually already out. The movie's coming out this summer. But my cannabis story is I was sentenced to 35 years in federal prison for attempting to possess cannabis. So
whoa, hang on a second. I want to clarify that. I heard you say you were in jail, or you got sentenced to 35 years for attempting to possess.
Yes, I never even had it. Attempting to possess. Yep. Sentenced to 35 years.
That's crazy. Crazy.
Yeah.
Did this happen in California?
In Illinois.
Illinois.
Federal. The feds.
Gotcha. Yeah. Well,
yeah.
So how do you feel now that it's a legal substance in Illinois and in California and in Massachusetts and in 21 other states?
I mean, I think it's a good thing that, that the states are, setting this trend to decriminalize marijuana and makes people's lives a lot easier for people who actually consume it. But while I was in there, it was one of the most painful feelings to just be confined to prison for potentially the rest of my life while witnessing other people legally getting rich from the very same thing that I had done, perhaps even to a greater degree than I had been sentenced to prison for. So it was hurtful. It was mind-boggling. But I had to tell myself that if I'm in prison for something that's legal, so in a sense, it kind of gave me a little pep in my step because it made me realize that I was now in prison for something that wasn't a crime. Right. So it was like I was the good guy and the feds were the bad guys, because they had me in prison for something that was no longer illegal. So yeah, that's how I used to get by.
I understand. Hey, and I do you know that there's a form now that you can fill out to get that expunged, right? I mean, the president of the United States actually mentioned the word marijuana. First time in my life I've heard a president mention that. And while, I'm not a big fan of the administration and how slow they have been, but at least he's trying to help out those that have been unjustly in prison like yourself.
Well, it doesn't apply to my case because it's for simple possession. So if you have attempted to possess with intent to distribute, it doesn't apply. So if you have possession with intent to distribute, it doesn't apply. So it doesn't affect as many people as we hoped it would. But yeah. I mean, it's a step forward because it does help some people. But hopefully, we can get more legislation or some more administrative action by the president to actually help those who were not affected by this last administrative act that he done.
Yep. Hey, Josh, you're on mute again, so don't forget to unmute yourself. There you go. I'm sure you have a question. One of the coolest things about Quawntay here is he actually represented himself to get his release from jail. Go ahead, Josh.
Right. Yeah. Well, so I mean, we skipped over a big part. So before I ask you about, you're just diving in and learning and getting yourself out, I want to figure out how you got in, because 35 years is insane. There's murderers that have done less time than the time you did. Like you did 16 years or whatever. I've seen crazy things, like, so I need to fit. I need to understand. Intent to distribute gets you 35 years or something.
Did you get set up? Like, what did they do to
Yeah,
get you for 35 years?
a reverse thing set up by the feds. I was going to purchase it, and they arrested me.
Okay,
And how
was
much
a
were you
huge,
going
huge
to
volume.
purchase?
Yeah, obviously.
It was a lot. It was
Like
a lot.
over 10 pounds,
Yeah.
20,
Yeah, it was much more than that.
50 to 100. Okay. Yeah, but
Okay,
it was
A
a
okay.
little
10.
more.
I get it, but still, that's insane.
So you get in there, and then how long until you're like, okay, my lawyer sucks? Because they do. Like, for example, I went to a college town, drove 6 hours in state of Washington, got there, and then this girl I was dating was like, here, hold my beer. And then these cops came and swarmed me and gave me an MIP, and they saw it. And they didn't care, So I mean, I don't trust them as far as I can throw them. What made you? And so my point of that is, when I went to court, the attorney was getting laughed at. He didn't know what he was doing. I should have represented myself. That guy was a damn fool. When and how did you figure out that your attorney was a complete fool?
So it's a long story, but I can try to explain. So initially, when I first got arrested, I started trying to escape from prison. That's the way that I planned to get out. I found out that I had a child on the way. My daughter was conceived 3 weeks before I was arrested. So I just,
Wow.
from that moment on, I just tried to escape every chance that I got. Had some successful ones and some famous escapes. But eventually, it was after I was in for approximately 16 years that I discovered a loophole and fired my attorney. Well, the attorney didn't believe in it. So I filed a motion with the court. The attorney said that it wasn't going to work. He didn't believe in it. So I fired my attorney, represented myself, and the judge agreed with me and let me out, gave me immediate release.
That's amazing.
What
What were the
absolutely-
terms behind that? Can you explain like how you found the loophole, and maybe a little bit about what that was,
Well,
because other people can learn from that? Maybe your
Yeah,
movie and book too
it's
can.
yeah. Right now, it's a common practice now in the federal system. It's under the compassionate release statute. There was some ambiguity there so the compassionate release statute was enacted during Reagan's term, where when they abolished parole, they left a clause in there to where the Federal Bureau of Prisons could actually file a motion to request that a prisoner be released for extraordinary circumstances. And a lot of times, those circumstances were defined when a prisoner was dying on his deathbed, had some type of terminal illness, or couldn't take care of himself. But the problem was that the Federal Bureau of Prisons was only filing approximately 12 of these motions for prisoners every year. And in each situation, the prisoner actually died within 6 months from being released. So in 2018, Congress amended this statute and said that the prisoner himself can file the motion to the court if the Federal Bureau of Prisons refused to do so. So with that said, it opened up the door for prisoners to go directly to the court. However, there was still some ambiguity there because the Sentencing Commission was delegated the task of defining what extraordinary and compelling reasons were. And at the time, during Trump's administration, there was no quorum. Most of the judges on the Sentencing Commission had retired. So the Sentencing Commission was behind Congress's act, which amended that statute. And so since there was no Sentencing Commission in place to define those extraordinary and compelling reasons, it was left for the judge to define it. And that was one of my arguments there, was that it was the judge had the authority to define what extraordinary and compelling reasons were. And in my case, the fact that marijuana was being decriminalized in most states was one of the reasons that I suggested she rely upon in reducing my sentence. And that amongst other things, like the fact that I had a teenage daughter who needed me, and I had created a bunch of curriculum and programs within inside of the prison to help rehabilitate other prisoners. And I had a movie coming out. I had published a book. So there was a lot of different things. And the judge agreed with me and granted the motion.
Thank
That's awesome.
goodness for that, Judge. It gives me
Yeah.
some faith. It gives me a little faith in our judicial system. I
Yeah.
I will say it's under the microscope now more than ever before. But I heard another horrible story again recently about our justice system, and I don't want to get into that. I want to focus on you, Quawntay, if you don't mind. You do have a book. You wrote a book.
Yeah.
And you said it's already out. Can you get it on Amazon?
Yeah.
What's it called?
It's called Chasin Freedum, and you can actually get the book from my website. So the book idea came about because after I escaped the last time, the National Geographic Channel produced a documentary about that escape, and they aired it around the world. And I started receiving a bunch of mail from people who were touched by my story. They didn't agree with the lengthy sentence that I had. And a lot of them believed that I was too smart and too much of an asset to society to be confined to prison for 35 years. So on one hand, we had people whom I'd never met believing in me. And on the other hand, we had a criminal justice system which said that I was worthless to society. So I decided that I was going to write this book to give the world me. I wanted everybody to understand who I was and who I am at the moment. And the way for me to do that was by to tell my story and to give people historical facts on how I actually grew up and things that made me the person that I was. And nobody's born evil. Nobody's born a drug dealer. Nobody's born a criminal. It's just certain circumstances that tend to direct us down certain paths. And I grew up in one of those communities where there weren't many opportunities, if any. My father was gang members. My family were gang members. Unemployment was probably 90% in my community. And so selling marijuana and drugs was one of the only ways that I saw for a young Black man to actually be financially successful. And that's how I began to sell drugs. And I just wanted people to understand that and understand where I came from before they decided to judge me as this threat to society. And so I put everything on paper, self-published the book. And ironically, at the time that I was writing this book, I felt free. This is the freest I ever felt because I was being vulnerable. I opened myself up to the world. Before, you couldn't pay me to talk. You couldn't pay me to take a picture. You know what I'm saying? I was extremely introverted and I was extremely underground. I didn't want any type of publicity. And so after the National Geographic Channel did the documentary and I started receiving this little degree of fame or infamy, whatever you want to call it, I felt like I was compelled to just come out and let people know who I was. And I felt free. And so at that moment, I realized that I'd been pursuing freedom the wrong way. I thought that money would free me. Being able to make money, move out of the projects, move out of the ghetto, do things for my family. I thought that was freedom. I thought that escaping from prison and being out to raise my daughter was freedom. But as I was writing this book, I realized that freedom is something you find within inside. And I found freedom in solitary confinement. And so I titled the book Chasin Freedum, D-U-M, because I'd have been pursuing it the wrong way. And I self-published that book when I was in prison. And to this day, I'm still selling that book on my website. And that book was optioned for a feature film, which is the movie that'll be coming out this summer.
That's fantastic. Well, and also, as I look at your bio and your story's incredible, and it's going to be a great movie. It's obviously going to be a great book because it's your life and your whole story. But it says here you run a nonprofit for at-risk kids. Tell us a little bit about that work.
Yeah, I'm working with the ICANN Youth Foundation, and what our mission is to keep kids off of the streets and give them opportunity by mentorship and being involved in sports programs. I'm also the president of the Chasin Freedum Foundation, which also does somewhat of the same and also help get nonviolent prisoners, nonviolent drug offenders out of prison and help them reintegrate into society.
Now you're doing God's work. You know that, right?
Yeah, that's the purpose.
That's fantastic. Doug, you got something for Quawntay? I'm sure you do.
Yeah, I'm just intrigued by your story because that's fascinating. But the fact that you fired an attorney and then just went and represented yourself is just some ballsy things to do, because most people are like, the attorney tells you something and you're just like, all right, that's the way it goes. And you just kept on going at it
Yeah.
and figured it out. I mean, and to get the judge to actually agree with you, and that's a pretty, and just the timing of it all, like you said, the whole Trump administration was missing that panel, so they didn't have a choice. They had to go to the judge at that point. So you like, just the time, it's just an amazing story of just, but I mean, the fact that, I mean, they set you up and they gave you that much time for a plant that they legalized down the road, it's just absurd, and just shows you that our judicial system just has things wrong almost every time.
Yeah, I concur with that. And everything happens for a reason. So it's all a blessing. Everything is meant to direct you where you're supposed to be in life.
And what kind of relationship? Oh, sorry, go ahead.
Before I was going down the wrong path. So I needed, this kind of helped me find my meaning and purpose in life. So I'm fortunate to have gone through it.
Wow.
And I was going to ask, since you had that time away from your daughter, you were saying that's a lot of time. What kind of relationship? Because you have to really build a relationship. You were out of her life from a lot of her childhood. So
Yeah,
how did that transition?
So out of everything that I've been through, escaping from a maximum security prison while confined to a cell with a camera in it, represent myself, get myself out of prison, getting out, raising millions of dollars to produce a star-studded movie. The most difficult thing I had to do was build that relationship with my daughter. Because you're talking about a 15-year-old girl who never spent a day with me.
Yeah.
And so, the hormones and the attitudes of a 15-year-old girl. And
Doug, you're not familiar with that age, are you, Doug?
I have a 13-year-old, so I know exactly, and that's why I was kind of, I didn't know how old your daughter was, but that's why
I warn parents about the 15-year-old female year. It is the most challenging year of my life.
It is.
And you just show up in her life all of a sudden, and now she's going to just take it all out on you because you were not there, and you kind of get it, but you try to, make up for it. That's why. That's crazy.
She definitely was crazy about me. She always loved me and just wanted me. So when I got out, I got full custody of her. And so the challenge, though, was dealing with the trauma that she had been through while I was in prison.
Right.
And also, I had to learn how to be a little bit more sensitive and compassionate, because coming from prison, where you're in this masculine, hardcore environment where you're taught not to express any emotion other than anger, and where you're pretty much taught not to put up with anybody's sensitivity or bullshit. I don't want to hear no sensitive bullshit. But now I had to do 180-degree change coming straight out of prison, and to where I had to be more understanding, more compassionate, more sensitive, express more, of the tender emotions, things that I wasn't allowed to express in prison. So it was a big challenge, but it definitely one that I conquered, and everything turned out well.
I'm just amazed at your story in so many ways. I usually do a lot more research on people that I talk to, but I had a feeling based on what Steve had shared with me about your story that I was like, oh my God, I just can't wait to talk to this guy. Can we go back to the fact you mentioned this now in a few times in our discussion here, the escape from prison. Okay. It wasn't your first attempt, you said, right?
No.
Yeah. So how did this, can you walk us through it? I mean,
Yeah.
I've watched Shawshank Redemption probably 5,000 times, right? Andy, going through all the crap in the sewer and all that. I mean, I don't think it was like that, but tell me how challenging this had to be for you.
It was extremely challenging, but one thing I learned about life is that we as human beings, we are good at everything that we have to do. When we have to do something, when we need to do it, we'd be surprised how good we are. And at the time, that's all I thought about. From the moment I found out that I had a child on the way and that I was expected to spend the rest of my life in prison for marijuana, only thing I thought about was escaping. From the moment I woke up to the moment I went to sleep, and even in my dreams, everything was geared toward escaping from prison. So with that mindset, I picked up on everything. I observed how many footsteps a guard would have to take to get to the end of the hallway. I observed everybody's action. I listened to everything. I studied every building. I would count bricks, and I would size up everything. And so the more I did that, I think it started coming to me. Just it opened my mind up to different ways to execute an escape. So after a couple times and getting caught, the marshals transferred me to maximum security. They locked me in a cell 24 hours a day. And inside of the cell, they had a surveillance camera to watch me and make sure that I wouldn't try to escape again. But I managed to pull off what they considered to be one of the most ingenious prison breaks in United States history. And I got away. And they started calling me Houdini. And and then, so actually, if you viewers all can go watch the documentary, it's on my website, because that's the National Geographic actually did a website, did the documentary about that.
Fantastic.
And so I don't want to spoil it for anybody who wants to go watch it after listening to this show. So
all right, Bosco.
The details for them.
So you get out of prison. I'm curious if you've had the chance to go into a store and see what's being sold legally. I don't know if you're able to, what the deal is. But have you been able to check it out? What's your opinion about the market? Have you seen it, or are you just resentful that it put you in prison for that long?
No, I'm not resentful at all. Ain't no resenting me at all. Yeah, I've been inside of several dispensaries. I've been keeping up a little bit with what's going on in the industry.
And you just look at it like, this is trash. I could have sold way better stuff.
I don't know. I think now the shit is way much better now. They're throwing some potent shit now, right?
Well, you've been in prison for a long time. I bet you home grows way better. The dispensaries are trash, man. Trust me.
How old were you? How old were you, Quawntay, when you got set up?
I was 28.
28. Okay. Wow. 28. I'm just doing a little math. That's all right. I got you. So I now know how old you are and everything. But what do you want? What do you want to accomplish now that you've accomplished so much? You've identified this humans humans are great when they have to do something, is one of the reasons why I have such respect for single mothers of children, because they have no choice, right? They have no choice. They have to do it, right? And I'm amazed by that. I wrote that down. I just want you to know I'm using that as a quote for you, if that's okay.
Yeah, yeah, for sure. And my thing now is just to get out here, share my story, and inspire people and teach people how to be resilient. Because life is however we perceive it, no matter where we are or what we're going through. If we can just find ways to think positively and optimistically about our experiences, it creates positive vibration, which attracts more positivity. And when you're in that positive mood, you are better off at overcoming whatever circumstances you are going through. If you think in negative, then it makes it extremely impossible for you to overcome it. So I just want to travel and speak and share my story and hopefully inspire other people to do the same thing.
Well,
Can you imagine in this day and age, they had you in maximum security with a security camera because you were set up for cannabis and we couldn't keep Epstein alive? Like, this is mind boggling to me that they put you in there and you were able to get out. This dude gets killed somehow and everybody's sitting there looking around like, oh, nobody knows what happened. That's kind of amazing when you really think about it. You were in there for a plant and they had you in that much security because you could escape. It's kind of funny. It's laughable, actually. Do you sue? Do you sue the federal government for this?
Nah.
No?
No,
Okay. I was just wondering if you did.
get yourself a good lawyer.
Yeah, I would have to think you have a great lawsuit. I mean, that's insane. They basically imprisoned you for something that's legal now, but that's another story.
Yeah, but I mean, that just for the government or a court to accept such a lawsuit would pretty much cripple the criminal justice system, because there's another 100,000 guys just like me spread out somewhere who should be coming after him with this war on drugs.
That's right. No,
Yeah, that's
and I'm sure you're familiar with Steve D'Angelo and his last prisoner project that's out there, right?
Yeah, for sure. I've met some of them. Yeah.
They're good people. All right. Well, hey, Quawntay Adams, first of all, what's the website that we can get your book and see your story?
It's QuawntayBoscoAdams.com.
So wait, I'm gonna spell it. I'm gonna spell it. Okay,
Yeah.
if that's okay. All right.
right.
QUAWNTAY, and then it's Bosco, BOSCO, and then Adams, ADAMS, and it's .com, right?
Correct.
Fantastic. And wow, I got to tell you, these stories are why I love what I'm doing now. It's very simple. We want to give people like you, anybody who has been incarcerated unjustly, and this is how I look at your story for sure, has an opportunity to tell their story, and yours is extremely compelling. And I wish you the best of luck. And I want to tell you right now, anytime you need a forum, you just call me or Steve Goldner, okay? And you can, you're welcome here on this program. And that's why we built this network, to tell the stories of the cannabis industry in their own words, in people's own words. Because coming from media from 30, 40 years in newsrooms, I'm still fighting my old friends that they would even notice what I'm doing in the cannabis space. And that has become in a legal liberal state like Massachusetts, I still have to fight that. But that's part of the journey, right? It's part of the journey that we're all in together. So
Great
anyway,
things don't come easy.
that is so
You
true.
gotta
And
fight.
Go ahead. Last word.
And it takes a coalition of people to get behind greatness. It's up to us to push it. If we don't, then we'll be swamped and overcome with negativity. So I think it's our obligation to kind of balance our society.
Well, we still have a lot of balance that we have to work on for sure. But
stuff.
Quawntay, it was great to talk to you. You ended this show perfectly. We do have our live news coming up next on our network. So I want to have people certainly stay tuned for that. So for Josh Kincaid and Doug Miller, I'm Jimmy Young. Thank you so much for watching another edition of Green Rush Live. We Talk News coming up right now.
With that, we're going to roll this one up. I'm Josh Kincaid. This is The Talking Hedge. Don't forget to like, share, and subscribe, or don't, and I'm out. Don't forget to smash that like button on your way out and check out these other videos that we've got.
Thanks for listening to today's show. To check out more great cannabis podcasts, go to podconnects.com. Here's a preview of one of our other shows.
Hey there, my name is Leah Babrudi, and I'm the founder and host of Canachicks Podcast, where I discuss cannabis, psychedelics, and other natural medicines. I not only interview people who use them as treatment for different conditions, but also the entrepreneurs who share their knowledge on how they built their businesses. If this sounds interesting to you, give my show a listen. I'm sure you'll learn something that'll surprise you.